Alright, well, this is probably going to sound a little funny because I'm narrating this from indoors, so you don't hear the wind blow on the tree. But it was too noisy, so anyway, this is the 2011 garden. That's my neighbor Joe's house in the background, and this is the first of the 45-foot beds. Those are peas there on the left that are starting to climb the fence, and beets in the foreground. Um, Barbara started some of these beets at her house a couple months ago. And so walking along here, what I did is used burlap to kind of give me a little bit of a protection from weeds growing up around that fence. And then also put some burlap down in Joe's yard to the left there so that he could control his weeds. And then this whole row is, the rest of the row is tomatoes, and there's some young basil starts there that I'm doing a close-up of. And as we get a little further down, there's some cilantro and more tomatoes. I like to grow a lot of tomatoes because I want to do canning. And I love cilantro, so I'm hoping to have some salsa. So this is row 2. And these are the potatoes that I'm growing in sacks. Those are California white potatoes on the left and Yukon Gold on the right. I'm just kind of starting. These are my 6 fava bean plants. And then some onions I transplanted. And some parsley that left over from last year that is about to be ripped out. One thing new I'm trying this year is eggplant. And right there is the lone eggplant seedling that started. And I actually started that indoors on a heating pad. And I think this is a cherry tomato that I just planted from seed. Yeah, a red cherry tomato on May 4th. This is a cabbage. It'll be a large green cabbage. And then that wood is where I'm going to put a sprinkler soon. That was some more cabbage. And of course another tomato. And then down toward the end there's several rows of different varieties of carrots and cucumber and zucchini at the end, which I'll be coming up on here shortly. So carrots are interesting. You might notice that a lot are growing on one side and not on the other. I have no idea why. Those cucumbers, some radishes there in the middle, and then my lone zucchini plant. I thinned all the other ones. And then these are the beds that I built by hand, and these beds were all placed down on a weed barrier. So I'm hoping that for years to come I don't have any weeding. It was romaine. This row here with the coffee grounds around it is Merlot lettuce. And you can see it's bright colorful red leaves. And then this is some red pepper seeds that I saved from a red pepper that I just bought at the store. It's finally started. And then I got a couple of hot pepper starts here. I think those are mixed chili peppers. And then my superstar plant is the kale there, a couple rows of kale, a couple more rows of radishes, and that's a tomatillo. And it might seem crowded, but once those radishes get out there, it'll have plenty of room. That's my cold frame. The glass is up. I just put it up a few days ago when it really started to turn hot. Now that's a serrano pepper that I started indoors. And there's a couple other peppers starting there. My other superstar is chard. And then there's some Valentine lettuce, kind of a boutique lettuce that my neighbor Aaron gave me. There's some green leaf spinach and some green and red spinach. Those are doing well. Had a bunch of those in lasagna last night with Sarah and Sean. That was a radicchio, which I have no idea what it is, but it's growing. This is pak choy, a couple rows of pak choy that are growing. Chinese cabbage. This is arugula. I have more than enough of it. I'm going to thin some of that out. This is a Simpson lettuce, which is a very delicate lettuce. And then mustard greens, which we're not eating as much of as I thought, so I'm going to thin those out a little bit too. And then some herbs. The dill there is fantastic. And there I am going in for another taste. It's really, really good. That's me filming myself. There's some basil that are planted from seed. There's some new parsley. And then more cilantro. You can never have enough cilantro or enough basil as far as I'm concerned. And I think you probably never have enough tomatoes, which is what we're going to be coming up on here in a second. This row is the first of the 30-foot beds. All the other beds were 45-foot beds. In this row I'm growing corn and a variety of squashes. You can see the corn there just started. The first 4 hills here are all pumpkins, which are from seeds that I saved that I actually baked by accident. So we'll see how they grow. They didn't do too well last year, but I don't think they had enough full sun. And then let's see, I think that might be a yellow squash. It's probably another yellow squash plant there. There's kind of a yellow crookneck squash. I think I'm trying to zero in on the name. You see my irrigation system. And this squash I'm actually calling Fancy Squash. It's a friend of Barbara's. Her name is Francoise and her nickname is Fancy. And she gave us kind of this, I don't know, interesting squash late last fall. And of course, like everything else, I saved the seeds and planted them and they're growing. And then my irrigation on this side of the garden is soaker hoses. I really aim to try to make irrigation easier this year. All of the garden beds are made from either wood that I found or wood that people gave me. I tried to buy as little, very little wood as possible. I'll do a little weeding on the way here. This is where we get into all the tomatoes that I'm growing this year. And I mainly grow tomatoes for the purpose of canning. I really want to make a lot of sauce and salsa and ultimately have it last year-round. But I'm sure I'll pick a few for fresh sliced tomatoes too. And then there's some onions you can see along the sides though. I transplanted those from the onion garden that we have in Joe's backyard. And so this is the kind of the cap of the irrigation. The hoses kind of run down and back and across. I've kind of buried them underground in between the 3 different beds. Those are my burlap sacks, and those are just full of extra dirt that I'll use to mound these potatoes here. These are, I got some free California White and Yukon Gold seeds from a farmer at Justo, I think it's Justo Farms in Portland. It's nice of them to give me those for free. These potatoes actually were some that are growing from last year from potatoes that when we dug them, we didn't dig everything. And then this is my mounding with straw experiment. I'm going to see how well that does this year. I have some leftover straw bales. And then a few more tomatoes. Rounding out this row. So I don't know how many total tomato plants I have. These are Silex tomatoes, so I think they'll be a pretty good size. All of the tomato plants were started indoors back in January or February. And so that's the view kind of looking back. This is the kind of the side street there on the left. So that's Joe's house, is the brick house. And then I'm going to do a quick shot here of his backyard, and in the distance there, you can't really see him there, but in front of the fence are 2 long garden beds that one of them has onions in it. There's a quick walk back. And then in between all the garden beds, of course, is burlap and whenever Joe mows, he throws down his grass clippings, and we get a really nice clean path in between our garden beds. That surprisingly, grass will still grow through the burlap and the old dried grass. So that's it for the gardens there. I'm going to go now toward the house and show you a few other experiments I have going on. That's my Honda. And then this patch coming up here on the left, a lot of people in Portland do this, where they kind of garden in their front yards. They garden in their the curb areas. Those are some red potatoes, the last of the Durango Reds I got from a farmer a few years ago. Then this is where I planted the Bill squash, I'm calling it. This is a squash that I grilled and froze for a year and a half, and I'm trying to grow the seeds. And then I have a few more tomato plants that I just transplanted last week. Because I got tired of watering them inside the house. They're actually on the front step now. So this area here is it's a vacant lot right beside my house that the developer hasn't built on yet. This is where I'm trying my dry gardening experiment. This garden bed here is left over from last year. I have some Italian red torpedo, onions. That purple thing is a purple cabbage that is going to seed, and I'm trying to save the seeds because I ran out. And then that row there, it's kind of hard to see, but there's some broccoli just starting out. And I'm going to try the dry gardening with the broccoli. I only watered for the first week or so when they were germinating. I haven't touched them since. And then this row here is Brussels sprouts. And it saved a ton of Brussels sprout seeds for some planting I did a couple of years ago. So I have a lot of plants started. This is garlic. It was planted last October, so that'll be ready to harvest in about another month. Stalks aren't too meaty, and fortunately I've got 200 more plants up at Barbara's father's house in Longview, Washington. So that'll help get us through the year.